Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I see lots of names and faces. We're happy to have you all here, and I'll get us started. My name is David Brown. I'm Director of Public History for Leo Baeck Institute, and we're very happy to co-host this program this afternoon with Widen the Circle. And this is, I think, the third program, at least the third program we've done together with Widen the Circle. So by this point, probably most of you are familiar with both organizations, but I'll give you a two-sentence, let's say, introduction to Leo Baeck Institute. We are a library and archive focused on the history of German-speaking Jews. And we're located here at the Center for Jewish History in Manhattan, where we are the stewards of a collection of over 10,000 archival collections, 80,000 library books, over 8,000 works of art, and they all come from German-speaking Jews, many of whom emigrated, fleeing Nazi persecution, who saved their personal papers, the things that helped them remember their family history over centuries in Germany, Austria, and other parts of Europe. And we make that available to researchers, which in the past was primarily scholars, but today more and more of the people who are using that kind of material are people in Germany, in Austria, and other parts of Europe who have not necessarily a personal connection or a family connection to German Jewish history, but are, excuse me, but are doing work to remember an important part of their community's past. And that is how we came to be friendly with the Obermayer Foundation, and now Widen the Circle, which of course has a program recognizing this kind of work in Germany in particular. We are proud partners of the Obermayer Awards, and have had staff members on the jury for many years now. And to tell you a little bit more about the work of Widen the Circle and the Obermayer Foundation, I am happy to now introduce Joel Obermayer, who is the Executive Director of Widen the Circle, who will also introduce our special guests. So thanks, Joel.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. Thanks for that introduction. We're always happy to be in partnership with the Leo Baeck Institute, which we've been for more than 20 years now. I'm really excited for this event, which was one of our series of conversations with Obermayer Award winners. Today's event is with Stefan Schirmer of the soccer club Ente Bagdad, also known as in English as the Baghdad Ducks. Before we get to that, I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to Widen the Circle. Many people who are on may be familiar, so I'll keep it short. Widen the Circle has offices in the United States and Germany. We work with people who uncover local history related to oppression and bigotry, particularly Jewish history and the Holocaust in Germany, and history like the legacy of slavery in the United States. And we use lessons of that history to create a more just world today. We have three main programs. We won the Obermayer Awards, which David just talked about, which are every January in the Berlin Parliament. Second, Widen the Circle has also developed a network of German activists who do remembrance projects and use remembrance to fight modern prejudice in Germany. And then our third area builds bridges among educators and activists in the United States and in Germany who are dealing with issues of historic injustice. And we bring them together so they can learn one another. We do this partly through, partly through virtual events and also through an immersive educational program we run each June. So that's why in the circle. Now I would like to introduce our guest. And primarily I'd like to introduce Ente Bagdad, which is the soccer club from which Stefan Schirmer has done his work. And we'll hear from Stefan in just one moment. But first, I just want to talk about Ente Bagdad, the organization first. Ente Bagdad started in 1973 when a group of high school graduates in Mainz founded an amateur soccer club. They chose the name Ente Bagdad, which means the Baghdad Ducks, because Baghdad sounded worldly and exotic back then. And ducks, well, ducks, because ducks always swim on top of the water. So they're always on top. Ente Bagdad's philosophy is that soccer is universal, where football, as some of you from Europe may say, it can provide a space for diverse people to meet and learn about each other. And today the club has members from more than 24 countries. It is played at the local, regional, national, international levels. At the same time, the club has engaged in many social justice activities, including working with refugees and organizing trips to the home countries of its members. Another key element of its activities has been teaching about local Jewish history and teaching about the Holocaust through soccer history and focusing on issues of diversity, even in the history that they teach. So together, Stefan Schirmer and Ente Bagdad were recipients of the 2023 Obermayer Award. Stefan is one of the leading lights and leaders of Ente Bagdad. And to start, I would love to show you a short film about them. So we will watch that now. I hope you'll watch it now.
Der FC Ente Bagdad ist ja seit seiner Gründung 1973 ein sehr weltoffener und auch internationaler Verein. Wir haben 25 Nationen unter unserem Dach und insofern haben wir schon immer Mitspieler anderer Nationalitäten herzlich willkommen geheißen im Rahmen der Entenfamilie. Wir haben als kleines Schnellboot zwischen den großen Tankern der Politik uns gesagt, wenn etwas getan werden muss, dann tun wir das und wir krempeln die Ärmel hoch und wir machen einfach. Und wir engagieren uns ehrenamtlich, unbezahlt in unserer Freizeit. Wir sind der Meinung und ich persönlich bin auch der Meinung, dass dieses Engagement sich lohnt. Zumindest ist das ein Traum von mir.
Und Stefan ist sehr open-minded, ist sehr offen, unwahrscheinlich engagiert. Das braucht man. Das ist ein wirklicher Macher. Das Besondere ist, dass wir uns schon seit sehr vielen Jahren um Menschen kümmern, um Menschen, die benachteiligt sind. Wir setzen uns aber auch ein grundsätzlich gegen Rassismus. Wir sind für Vielfalt, wir sind für Toleranz und wir treten ein für demokratische Werte und für Menschlichkeit.
Ganz persönlich bin ich einfach beeindruckt, gerade von auch dem gesellschaftlichen Engagement. Und das zeigt einfach auch, finde ich, eine Größe von dem Verein und auch von Stefan, sich wirklich täglich einzusetzen für Menschen, die eben es besonders schwer in unserer Gesellschaft haben. Und das ist halt was sozusagen auch den Bogen von der Vergangenheit in die Gegenwart spannt.
Seit 2016 haben wir mit den Mainzer Erinnerungswochen angefangen hier in Mainz, die wir auch entsprechend initiiert haben und bei denen wir uns immer um Opfergruppen des Nationalsozialismus kümmern.
Und gedenken seitdem jedes Jahr mit Ausstellungen, Vorträgen, Podiums- und Publikumsdiskussionen, mit Stadtführungen und diesen Dingen gedenken wir einer bestimmten Opfergruppe. Das begann mit den jüdischen Opfern, das ist die größte Opfergruppe des Nationalsozialismus. Dann kümmerten wir uns um Sinti und Roma, um Homosexuelle und um die sogenannten Euthanasieopfer.
Selbstverständlich war einer der Hauptschwerpunkte gleich am Anfang halt die jüdische Geschichte, ja. Und wir hatten den Enkel von Eugen Salomon, der hier einer der ersten Präsidenten oder der erste Präsident von Mainz 05 war. Den hatten wir hier gehabt im Stadion und er hat auch eine kleine Ansprache gehalten vor 30.000 Zuschauern bei dem Spiel gegen Bayern München. Hat er von seinem Großvater erzählt und das war für uns ein ganz, ganz großer Augenblick.
50 Jahre FC Ente Bagdad, 50 Jahre gesellschaftliches Engagement, 50 Jahre Hobbyfußball, 50 Jahre Erinnerungsarbeit, 50 Jahre Geflüchtetenarbeit. Das heißt, man lernt eine ganze Menge. Als dann 2014 die ersten Geflüchteten in Mainz ankamen, haben wir dann eben sukzessive diese Menschen, wie gesagt, willkommen geheißen und auch ein Vertrauen zu ihnen aufgebaut.
Ich war erst mit meiner Familie ein Jahr gewesen, dann sind die ja wieder zurück nach Syrien geflogen. Deswegen war ich ja auf einmal alleine. Und als ich Ente Bagdad das Verein halt gefunden habe, hatte ich eine große Unterstützung bekommen. Es ist nicht nur Fußball, sondern wir sind auch mehr als Freunde.
Durch Stefan und Ente Bagdad, der hat das so gemacht, dass es ein Programm gibt, wo die Menschen, so die Geflüchteten, Sport haben, Fußball spielen, Spaß haben und auch Beruf lernen und erfolgreich im Leben sind. Ente Bagdad hat so eine Seele, wo diese Seele für alle offen ist. So, herzlich willkommen. In Krieg verliert man viel, glaube ich. So, viel Teile von dem Charakter. Die Teile habe ich wieder bekommen bei Ente Bagdad. Ich habe wieder so diesen Bock aufs Leben und wieder alles zu sehen, die anderen zu helfen, da zu sein, einfach so.
Es ist nicht nur Fußball, es ist unglaublich viel. Ich finde, dass wir so ein integratives Projekt sind. Und zum Beispiel ein Mädchen hat gesagt, wenn ich hier renne, vergesse ich, wie die Bomben fliegen. Und das gibt so Motivation, weiterzumachen.
І завдяки волонтерам, і завдяки бахмуткам Багдату нас це якось об'єднує, робить дружніми. Ми намагаємося один одного виручати і робимо все для того, щоб ці наступне покоління росло в безпеці.
І у щасті.
І в щасті.
Ich hoffe immer, dass mein Engagement und das Engagement des FC Ente Bagdad etwas bewegt, und zwar zum Positiven hin. Und deswegen tun wir diese Dinge. Wir freuen uns darüber, alle Enten, alle, die sich damit engagieren und alle, die da aktiv mitarbeiten, dass wir diesen kleinen Beitrag zur besseren Funktion der Gesellschaft tätigen können. Wir setzen uns nicht hin, legen die Füße hoch, schalten einen Fernseher ein und meckern über die da oben oder die da draußen und was alles anders oder besser gemacht werden könnte. Wir krempeln die Ärmel hoch und wir tun dann auch was.
Great. I hope everyone enjoyed the film. And in a moment, let's meet Stefan Schirmer. Before we meet him, I just wanted to mention one thing. We have a chat going. I know some of the participants in the event may be used to sort of a more webinar format, but in this case, we have an active chat where you can make comments and things. Particularly though, we would love you to put your questions in chat. We have a couple of people will be watching over them. We'll gather them and we'll get them to them later. So there will be a chance for some questions answered later. Certainly. And with that, let's welcome Stefan Schirmer over here. Hello, Stefan.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thanks for thank you for joining us on hopefully a lovely evening. I'm just going to say a couple of sentences about you and then let's get into conversation if we can. Stefan is in many ways the guiding force behind Ente Bagdad, the organization that for decades has been a beacon for diversity, acceptance, and equality, as well as in recognizing and understanding Jewish history and culture. Also, Stefan, in your day job, Stefan works for a Swiss company that develops software used for digital printing. I hope I got that right. Good. All right. All good. All good. So Stefan, we learned a fair amount about your Ente Bagdad and your work in that film, a little bit from the introduction. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you personally got involved in this work, not just in the soccer club, but in all these activities around history, since obviously we have a lot of people watching who have an interest in that area as well.
Yes, no problem. I was born in the 1950s in a very conservative Catholic family, and it was an obligation to go to church every Sunday. It was also an obligation to become later on an altar boy. So that was the start of all that. But when I observed already as a child people in church I quickly saw and realized that there are some contradictions between the way people behave in church and what they do outside or in everyday life. So that was something that intrigued me already as a child, and I was always wondering why are they doing that. In school, that was in the 1960s and early 70s. In school, our teachers often were old Nazis because they were, they were still there. They were everywhere in German society because it was just a few decades, 2 decades after the war, and that also was something that intrigued me as well, because they were always talking about the Nazi regime and Second World War and how we could have won the war and what they did, what they did not, and what they knew, what they didn't know. And as I had the impression that many elderly people, especially, they were speaking about the Nazi time, the Third Reich, as a time when the others were the bad guys, the people who, the Nazis, and they were not Nazis. So everybody was talking about the Nazi time, but nobody happened to be a Nazi. So that was quite interesting. And that was, so to say, the start in my interest in that time, in that part of German history, and especially to know and to understand why people are talking like that, and why people talk differently than they behave.
Gotcha. So sort of a contradiction in the message and the reality in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask you? It sounds like that led you to learn what happened, like led to your own kind of trying to figure out, to understand the history better. Did I understand that right?
Yes, exactly. Because, I mean, almost everybody has been more or less touched by Second World War, by the Nazi regime, and influenced. My father was raised during Nazi time, so he was born in 1932. So his first 13 years he lived in that Nazi regime and Nazi thinking and things like that. My one of my grandfathers was a Nazi. So, but everybody said, well, it was always the others. We didn't know anything, but we were just the victims, if you want.
Can you tell me a little bit about what I understand is, as you found things out, as you learned more about the history, one of the things that it did is it changed your view of who you are. And what I mean by that is, I understand you have sort of a view about nationalism and versus being kind of a European in a way. And it's something you always hear about in the United States. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, nationalism is, for myself personally, is a very dangerous thing. You can be a patriot, but a nationalist is something that is very dangerous. As a nationalist, you're proud of things you haven't done, and you hate people you never met. So that is something that it's contradictory to my personal understanding of my existence and my thinking about German and European society and worldwide society, if you want.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really helpful. I'm wondering, I want to kind of bring the two things together, kind of your story and the story of Ente Bagdad, if you will. I know you got involved with Ente Bagdad when you were in the 1970s, when you were a young man interested in soccer, and began to kind of both connect the actual sport with this work that you've been, other things that you've been interested in. I'm wondering if you could maybe just tell us one more thing about Ente Bagdad, and then I want to hear some more about your work. The tagline, as I understand it, is you'll never waddle alone. Let me see if I can say that right. You'll never waddle alone. Yeah, I think I got that
Exactly,
one
yeah.
that time. Can you talk about why that's a good tagline? I mean, it's memorable, but can you talk about why it's a good tagline for your organization?
Yeah, first of all, it's soccer related because it's a famous soccer song in all European soccer stadiums coming out of Liverpool. You'll never walk alone. They sing that before every game at home, in Mainz as well, by the way. And so that was the soccer relationship. And as we are the Baghdad Ducks don't walk, they waddle. We just changed that verb to say, well, you never waddle alone. And it also tells everything in one short sentence about what we do, how we think, and because it means if I say that sentence to somebody in front of me, you'll never waddle alone, that means we will never leave you alone. We will always help you. We will always grab you by your hand and help you walk through your life, or help you in a specific situation. So it's like a big Ducks family, and we are always there for you.
So it's sort of like a philosophy in one sentence.
Yeah, you can say that. Okay. Yes.
Great. I'd love to talk a little bit about soccer, if that's okay.
4 hours if you want.
Sure. Well, look, we have seen a number of projects that involve soccer clubs in history. For example, a group involved with a professional soccer club in Berlin, Hertha BSC, won an Obermayer Award in 2020. And I know that in 2004, soccer fans in Germany founded something called the Never Again Initiative, or Nie Wieder, project aimed at ensuring that the Holocaust not be forgotten, and also combating discrimination in soccer. They adopted January 27th as kind of their key Remembrance Day. I'm bringing this up because I know that Ente Bagdad had become kind of a pillar of that initiative as it expanded. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing in relation to remembrance in relation to that kind of remembrance activity?
Yeah, this initiative, as you said, has been founded in the early 2000s, and since 2004. So next year we have 20 years of Remembrance Day in German football, as we call it, so soccer for you. And we got in touch with that initiative many years ago, and we found that it was a good initiative. It kind of expanded what we already did locally on a national level. And so we said to ourselves, well, this is something we have to support. And we are very, very active since, I don't know, 15 years or so in that initiative.
And my understanding is you do Remembrance Week or weeks even. It's not a single week for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. At one point in time, we thought that a Remembrance Day is fine. But in order to remember, to celebrate that day, one day is just not enough. So I think 7 years ago, we invented the Mainz Remembrance Weeks, which are around 27th of January. And during these weeks, we organize exhibitions, we organize eyewitness meetings, we organize discussions, we organize city tours, lectures, and things like that. And every year we concentrate on a different victim group of the Nazis.
Now, can you talk a little bit about, I know some of this must be memorialization and commemoration of what happened during the Nazi period. But my understanding is some of this is also just connecting with the history and the culture of the group of people that you're focusing on. Can you talk a little bit both about that and why that's important for you?
Well, as you might know, many of the soccer clubs in Germany have been founded by Jews, actually. So when soccer came to the continent, to the European continent from England, that was in the late 19th century, early 20th. Sports in Germany were mostly physical education, gymnastics, very military organized and things like that. And many people didn't like that. So I don't know why, but especially Jews didn't like that. So they embraced that new sport, which gave them the opportunity to do sports, to try out something new, something else. And so they started to found soccer clubs, and many of the national, the Bundesliga clubs today have been founded by Jews, by the way.
Wow. And I guess that means there's sort of a special connection between Jewish history and the history of the soccer clubs.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Because although they founded these clubs, when the Nazis got into power, they were excluded from their own clubs. They had been founded a long time ago, and so there is it's a twofold history. One thing is that these clubs have been founded by Jews, and the second one is the Nazi history of these soccer clubs. And many of these clubs did not yet think about that, did not yet work on their history during the Nazi regime. So there is a strong relationship between these two things.
Interesting. And you're saying that's still ongoing work that needs to happen now?
It is still ongoing, yes. We are working very closely together since many years with our local Bundesliga club here in Mainz, and whose founder was a Jew, by the way, Eugene Salomon. And we do a lot of remembrance work, and we also constantly initiate their work on diving deep in their history in order to talk about and to remember these people and their own club history.
Interesting. I was going to say that there's a little bit of a stereotype, so I'll be careful with it. You know, soccer supporters aren't always known as the most progressive group to engage with. I think, as particularly in certain parts of Germany where there's strong support for the far right, for example. And I guess the flip side of that is that it's a population that regular programs often don't get to. How do you see that?
Well, there are many clubs and many fan clubs of different soccer Bundesliga clubs that are very progressive, but there are also others who are still extremely right-wing and neo-Nazi and whatever you want to call them. So it's a very big difference between certain clubs, depending also on the region they are in and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. And as there is with many different organizations, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you one more thing. So I know that you started these Remembrance Weeks and focus, for example, on the Jewish history of the local Bundesliga team that you just mentioned. I understand that you're also doing remembrance work, essentially, around other repressed minorities. You mentioned a few of them in the film. I was wondering, maybe you could just talk a little bit about your work during Remembrance Week when you focused on Sinti and Roma issues. I think it's a history that's less well known, and it's a group, obviously, maybe not obviously, but it's faces a lot of discrimination today. And it'd be interesting just to hear a little bit, why did you focus on them and kind of what did you do?
As already said, we focused on the different victim groups, starting with the Jewish victims, which is the biggest group, and the second biggest is the Sinti and Roma people. There were, I think, 600,000 murdered by the Nazis, and when somebody talks about remembrance work, especially about the Nazi regime, everybody in the first place thinks about Jews, which is okay, but nobody thinks about the other ones. And we thought we have to put a flashlight on the other ones, to get them out of the dark, to get them into the remembrance, into the memory of the society. So. We have a very good and very friendly and very strong relationship with Sinti and Roma organizations here in Germany, and during the Mainz Remembrance weeks, we as I said, we got them out of the dark. We organized exhibitions, and we organized lectures and discussions and things like that, just to demonstrate to the audience, first of all, these people are still here. These people are German. And these people, they live in almost everywhere, and they are just normal Germans. They are not something strange, something different. But the Nazis had been concentrating on them for their racist theories and things like that. So we wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's. Well, anyway, I think that's an admirable thing to do. I just want to interrupt before I send my next question. I have been told that we should be asking for more questions from people in chat. So please feel free, any questions you might have. We will have a Q&A section toward the end. So please do that. Stefan, I want to switch gears just a little bit to another aspect of your work that's related, because they're all related. Which is about your work with refugees. My understanding is that a turning point was when Germany was flooded with refugees from the Middle East, particularly, although other places as well, starting around 2014. And I know your club got much more involved with refugee issues. I might ask you a broad question, but to start with, I'd like to ask you a very specific one. I'm wondering if you can talk about Shadi Sharif, who is one of the the young Syrian man who spoke so powerfully in the film. What was his situation when he came to Germany? What happened to him? What did Ente Bagdad do, or you and Ente Bagdad do? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about his situation now.
Yeah, Shadi was a young guy who came to us in 2015, and he flew his home country Syria together with his parents. They were boat people. They were marching during months to come to Europe, and when they arrived in Germany, Shadi was in Mainz, and his parents were somewhere in northern Germany. So he was quite alone over here, and he was looking for connections with German people. He wanted to play soccer and things like that. So he found us. So he found us. Normally it's the other way around, and he came to us, and it was, for him, I think, quite a difficult time, because nobody can imagine what these people endured during the time they spent to come to Europe. And he was a young guy, very intimidated, very he couldn't look straight into your eyes. You felt that he still had that fear of death somewhere in his head. So he was looking around him when he talked, and he couldn't laugh at all. And so when he came to us, it was like that. So we took him, so to say, in our arms, and helped him first of all with German language, and then in school, and later on we found a job for him, we found a flat for him, and things like that. And during the first 3 months, you saw that he started to relive, and after 6 months, the first smile appeared on his face, and that was something that is still a very moving memory for me, because somebody who has that fear in his eyes all the time, and suddenly smiling and laughing with the other refugees, that is something that it's just great.
And what is he doing now?
Well, today he is an IT administrator in a company close to Mainz, and he is so good. He always said that he wanted to become an IT administrator. That was his dream job, and we were happy to find that company for him. And he was so good in his job that during the time he was still a trainee, he already led a team of 10 people. And today he's he's a very important member of that company, part of that company. We paid his driver's license because he had to drive to the customers and things like that. So so he's a very good example for somebody who is totally integrated today, who wants to, who not only wants to, but who also builds his future in Germany. Right. And which is important, he's not only asking, he never asked for things. He does not only receive things, but he wants to give back. So he's committed, he's engaged, he helps us in our work, he helps to welcome new refugees and these things. So it's a wonderful thing.
So I'm just hoping to just give people a quick sense about what you do for refugees. And I should say that's a wonderful story, but we just want to give people a little bit of a sense of more broadly what you have done for the refugees that have come to you. I know it sort of starts with soccer in many cases, but it sounds like there's a component that involves employment and education. Just give us a quick sense of that.
Yeah, soccer is a very good low threshold entry because everybody knows more or less to play soccer or tries to kick the ball at least, and so this is a kind of it's an activity that is that makes it easy for us to get in touch with people, and from then on, well, we welcome them in the club. They know the other players. Everybody's nice. Everybody's friendly, and they start to understand the Duck family feeling, the Duck DNA. They know what it means. You never waddle alone, and that is something that builds up a new kind of confidence, which these people lost during the war in their home countries and during the time they flew to Europe and to Germany, and that is something which is a big part of our work because it's based on sustainability. We do not work on a project. It's not a project. A project ends after 2 or 3 years when financing stops, and then bye-bye, it was nice to meet you and things like that. No, we continuously help these people and work with these people, and then they come back and help us and work with us. So that's It's the way of doing and the way of executing integration here in our town and region.
Great, great. I have two more questions and we'll get to questions and answers, I think. Just a very quick thing, not quick, it's not that quick. You know, you work with people from so many different origins and backgrounds. And look, I understand that you may have to deal with some of the worldviews that may involve prejudice that refugees might bring with them. In some cases, I can imagine that might be related to anti-Semitism, but only in some cases. I understand that in other cases, it might be a different belief system. For example, you mentioned to me earlier in another conversation that Syrians and Afghans often have prejudice about one another in different situations. Can you just talk, you don't need to characterize it exactly, but just talk a little bit about how you address issues of prejudice and bias among the, among the people that you work with?
How many time have we got?
Just a little bit, a little sense of things.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's really a long story, and there are so many facets of doing that. Well, yeah, there are prejudices because these people, and I don't talk only about refugees, because German people have the same kind of thinking sometimes.
Sure.
And well, the point is to bring people together on a neutral ground, which is the soccer field, by the way, in our case. And soccer is a team sport, and without your teammates, you cannot succeed, and you don't win a game without the others. So you need to play together, and that is the kind of spirit we give them and we show them. And when there are really difficulties between different groups, for example, you mentioned Afghans and Syrians, Palestinians as well, and other countries, doesn't matter. Yes, we bring them together, we discuss with them, and we mix up the teams, for example. So there is not one Afghan team and one Syrian team. No, it's two mixed teams. That's another point. And when there are, we had, for example, a moment where I think it was a Syrian or a Palestinian guy who said all Jews are crap, all Jews are whatever you want to say, negative about Jews, because he was educated like that. Yeah, in his country, Israel, the Jews are the enemy. So that was a fact for him. And yeah, so we talked to him, and he said, yeah, this is why, and we've been told that this is, and look at Israel, what is happening over there with Palestinians, and the war with Syria and things like that. We said, yeah, but Israel is not the Jews. Yeah, Israel is a country, and a Jew is somebody who believes in the same God as you. So what do you think? And what do you think about this guy over here in your team? Is he okay? Oh yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. And I said, yeah, but he's a Jew. So what do you think about him, and what do you think now? So yeah, think a little bit before you you talk about these things, and make a difference between Israel and Israeli politics and the Jews.
Yeah,
in quotes. Yeah,
got it. That was very helpful. I have one last little story I was hoping you would tell, and then we'll get to the questions and answers. Can you talk briefly about what you did in 2018 after somebody, I think it was in Berlin, I think I have that right, was beaten for wearing a yarmulke?
Yeah.
Just briefly tell us what you all did.
We read about that in the newspaper, and we said to ourselves, "No, that's not possible. That's just impossible to do that. We must do something. We cannot do something locally in Berlin because we are in Mainz. That's 600, or for you, it's 400 miles away. So, we quickly organized a friendly game with the fan club of our Bundesliga club here of Mainz, every player wore a kippah before the game, before starting.
Every
the game.
player wore a yarmulke.
Yeah, and every player, including the Muslims. So there were people from Egypt, Syria, Afghanistan, Palestine, and many other countries from Africa as well, and everybody had that sign on their head, and we published that in the local and international newspapers and elsewhere, just to give a sign that we are not like these people and we want to express our that we just aren't happy with this kind of behavior. Yeah, that's not our thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Shady Sharif, the young man we talked about earlier, was also part of that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. He and others. Yeah.
Great. Stefan, thank you so much for this window into your work. I think we probably want to get a little bit more of a window now, but probably not so much for my questions. I think we want to turn to other people's questions. So,
yeah, obviously the chat is filling up.
Yeah, I think so. Let me turn it over. I think David's going to come back with questions. So David, do you want to jump with a question or two?
Yeah, we've been keeping track of your questions in the chat, so thank you, and keep them coming. And it's nice to meet you, Stefan, and thanks for the important work you do and for sharing it with us today. I'll start with a few questions that came in early, all kind of on the same topic, and that is about coeducational boys and girls, mixed teams. What do you offer for younger players, older players, in terms of sports for all genders?
We have always had just one team with all kinds of ages, all kinds of players, and that went from 16 to 72, something like that, and as an age span. And when the refugees came from 2014 on, we also founded youth teams, and these youth teams were mixed, Germans and refugees. So it's always the idea of integration and of mixing. And then last year in 2022, we had a whole bunch of Ukrainian refugees coming to us, mostly mothers with their children. And then we opened up, and today we have children from 3 to 12 years, and they play together, and boys and girls as well. You might have seen that in the background there are the Ukrainian colors, blue and yellow. And so yeah, we just didn't want to say to these people, no, we don't have a place for you, we don't have a trainer for you, just come to us. And so we opened that up broadly to several teams, mixed teams, boys and girls, Germans and foreigners. Does that answer the question?
I think
hope
so.
so.
I mean, it was several questions, so I
Yeah.
think you addressed the topic more broadly. We just got a new question on the same topic. That maybe you've covered it already, but maybe you might have a few more things to say. Alan M asks, what role do women play in the football club? In terms, I mean, are there women also involved in organizing and leadership, coaching, things like that, or?
Women are not so much on the pitch. Unfortunately, we would have loved, but we just had 2 or 3 women or girls playing with us. Today there are more women, yes, or more girls on the soccer field, yes, because they are part of the refugees. But although on the pitch there are mostly men, many families, the spouses, the children are involved in our work. So, for example, if I speak about my family, my wife and my 2 daughters, they are engaged in the club. They do things and they help us, and yeah, so it's a family business, if you want. But it's a huge family, because this Ducks family, as we call it, is composed of different private families, and so women are very welcome, and they help us a lot. Yeah,
Great.
We don't refuse them.
Victoria Harms asked a question. She also first appreciates your definition of nationalism that you gave earlier.
Oh, thank you.
And she says that it made her wonder whether you could talk about any resistance to your work that you've encountered, you know, in your local community. People, are there people who don't approve of what FC Ente Bagdad is doing, either because of, I suppose, anti-immigrant sentiment or whatever? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
Yes, indeed, we do have these people. Unfortunately, not many of these people, but there are a few, and they always say, "Well, again, these refugees, again, these foreigners, we don't want them here," and things like that. So we try to get into an open discussion with these people, but to be honest, they don't want to discuss. They just want to get their feelings out, and that's it. They are just bored, and they are so bored in their mindset that you cannot you rarely can access them, really. So there is no real discussion, and in that way, well, yeah, you cannot do anything except living with them, mostly ignoring them, and hoping that our work, which is not only local but also regional and national and international as well, which is sometimes appears sometimes in the press, that they see, well, it's obviously it's not that bad what they do. That is our hope, but so it's an indirect influence we can have on these people, but directly, no.
Yeah, but it's clear you don't let it stop you or slow you down.
Oh no!
Yeah,
It's just the opposite. Yeah, because that fuels our commitment.
So here's a question from Ethan Benzinger, who noticed that you mentioned some work memorializing the so-called euthanasia program in the video, and he says that he has some relatives that were victims of this Aktion T4. So could you give us a few more specifics on what that entailed? Not the
Yeah,
euthanasia program, but the memory work.
Yeah, the memory work. So the euthanasia victims were one of the victim groups we focused on during when was it? I think it was 2 years ago. No, last year it was. Yes, last year, 2022. So the entire Remembrance Week were the topic of the Remembrance Weeks was euthanasia victims, and we invited some people who spoke about, first of all, these institutions. There is one close to Mainz, and they also explained how that worked, because these people, they were mentally or physically disabled, because these people were sent to different places in Germany, and usually after a few weeks, the family got a notice that their family member died because of something quite normal, but weird for that specific case. And yeah, that was one part. There were exhibitions, and there were panel discussions with people who are working on that specific topic. And yeah, so that's how we approached that that subject. And we had a lot of people who in the audience, because we have audiences of, yeah, let's say 60 to 100 people. Many people didn't know that. They did know that there was an euthanasia program, but that was all. So they learned a lot, and we learned a lot as well. Yeah, because
here's a question from Edward Stein, who he has a few questions. I think you've answered most of them already, but just an incidental personal question that I hopefully isn't too personal, but maybe just gives an insight into the sort of cultural context that you come from. And that question is whether you knew any Jewish people growing up in Mainz, or if you're not, I'm not sure if you were from Mainz originally, but wherever you are from.
I am originally from Mainz, but during my professional career, I was a foreigner in many countries. I lived there, I worked there, and not only as a tourist, but for several years. I didn't know Jewish people when I was young. No. Yeah. To come back to that question of Edward, I didn't know Jewish people because, well, we have a Jewish cemetery, a very well-known one in Mainz, yes, but there were obviously very few Jews left in Mainz, and I wasn't in touch with them when I was young, because as explained, Catholic family and so on. So you live in your own bubble, and yeah, that's it. I met many Jewish people later on, but not when I was young. No.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the Jewish community in all of Germany was quite small in the post-war period, really until the 1990s, and then as a result of migration from the Soviet Union, I think now has a much bigger presence, where I'm sure the context is a little different for someone growing up in a German city now.
Yeah, that's right. And as these people come from Eastern Europe, their their being Jewish is also different. It's they are much more Orthodox Jewish than people I met in Israel, for example. Yeah. So it's very it was very difficult to get in touch with the Jewish community in Mainz, for example. Yeah, because they just didn't want. But this year, we were happy to have in the synagogue in Mainz 300 people with an eyewitness, and that was a great success for the Jewish community as well as for us.
Great. I wonder if I might just take the prerogative to ask a question of my own, a little bit of a self-interested one for Leo Baeck Institute, but you mentioned the important role of Jewish people in the development of both amateur and professional soccer in Europe, but especially in Germany. And I'm wondering if you have ever seen or heard of the Leo Baeck Institute has some footage of the FC Bayern Munich versus a Frankfurt team, I think, in the 1932 World Championship that was actually featured in this biopic about Kurt Landauer, who was, of course, the Jewish president of the club at the time. I'm just wondering if you know the story of Kurt Landauer, if you remember this TV movie about him. What was it called? And if not, I'd be happy to share that with you afterwards. Of course, we have a lot of materials about Jewish soccer in our collections. But that's a particularly special one because, as far as I know, it's the only footage of that championship match.
I don't know the film, but I know that it exists, but I never saw it, and I know the story of Kurt Landauer because we cooperate with this Nie Wieder initiative, Never Again, and they have a strong unit in Munich as well. So I'm totally aware of that story, and there are many of this kind of stories all over Germany.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the star players at the time, and also the coach, were Jewish, and forced out of their clubs very shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
There were
many.
M.
Just one last sentence to that topic. There were many national players, Jews, who played for the national team, and after 32, they disappeared from any from any document, and they were killed in the concentration camps, and until today. No, it's just a few years ago when the National Football Association, the DFB in Germany, did mention them in their documents, in their books as well, and they were killed twice. Yeah, so they were playing in the national team, they were killed in the concentration camps, and in the books of the DFB, of the National Football Association, they had disappeared. They were erased. So, and that just changed very few years ago.
Yeah.
So sorry, but I just wanted to add that.
No, that's an important part of the story. Is the way that these memories were erased as well. But what I was saying was just that Alan M had posted in the chat, reminded me of the title of this mini series, Landauer, der Präsident, from 2014, is a sort of a TV biopic of Kurt Landauer, and I believe they used that LBI footage in the documentary. Well, we are at about an hour. I'm going to just look and see, are there any last questions? I'm not sure that I understand this one, but it's also from Alan M, who asks about Mainz 05. Does that ring a bell for you?
Yeah. That's the local Bundesliga club.
Oh,
Mhm.
I've really embarrassed myself here, as I have to admit, I am not, other than you know, my esoteric knowledge about you know, soccer clubs in the 30s. I don't follow football, but the question is, what part do they play in the community, and do their players get involved in your organization?
Indeed, they do. We have, as I already said, we have a very close and a very good relationship from top down with the president and the management team, and some of their players visit us, come to see us regularly, and they bring football equipment for the refugees and things like that. When we have 2 dates per year, which is birthday and death day of Eugen Salomon, who lived in Mainz and who was the founder and the first president of Mainz 05. We are cleaning the stumbling stones in front of his house. And we just put some flowers and things like that, and say a few words. And there are always people from Mainz 05 with us. So that's very close relationship. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're maybe at a good wrapping up point. Joel, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or a last question for Stefan?
Sure. I don't have a last question, but I have sort of a thought, which is, well, actually, maybe I'll start with something. Stefan, can you talk about, just briefly, you've done a lot of international trips. We're not going to go into a lot of detail about them, but I'm wondering, do you feel like there are people doing similar work in other places? Do you think it's just in Germany, or have you run into other, you know, soccer clubs that have kind of a similar outlook to yours?
Probably not soccer clubs, but I know that in other European countries there are organizations or people or groups of people doing kind of remembrance work as well. Yeah.
Great.
In France, in Spain, in Italy, not in England. Well, English people are kind of special, as you might know. Especially in relationship to World War II, the Nazi regime, and German panzers and everything. So, no. But yes, there are in several European countries there are comparable activities. I don't know exactly their extent, but we can find out, and we can widen the circle to find them. For example, yeah.
That's thank you. I should say, Stefan, I should have asked you this question, but we'll move on. But you know, Stefan has. We appreciate that you have been an active member of the network that we've been building in Germany with Widen the Circle, and so we really appreciate it. And I hope you've gotten something out of it.
I am taking a lot of profit out of that, so I appreciate being part of that circle, and I'm always happy to meet these highly committed people of different kinds, of different activities and different focuses. But it's always a pleasure.
Great.
So, and yeah, it's enriching. So. It helps a lot, and as I said earlier, it fuels, it gives energy for the work and for the commitment.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Listen, thank you, Stefan. Thank you to Leo Beck and David for partnering with us. I encourage people who are curious about Stefan's work or Widen the Circle to come to our website, widenthecircle.org. Aside from the film that we saw, we also have a really lovely profile of Stefan's work and Ente Bagdad there. I just wanted to mention briefly that on May 17th, we'll have another event with a pair of educators, one from Memphis, Tennessee, who works with Facing History and Ourselves, and one from Berlin, one of our awardees, Sabat Schmidhals, talking about some of the things that they learned when they were part of our visiting program last June in Berlin, and talking about aspects of remembrance in Germany and the United States. So for those of you who are joining us today, I hope you look out for an invitation to that. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for those thoughtful questions. And thank you, Stefan, for your insights.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you everybody for your interest. It was great to see you, and thanks for applauding. I applaud you because you spent your time with my talkings here. So very good. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.